stone foundations of structures down there as well.
There's a lot of things. Yeah, there's a lot of things.
Who wants to tell the story of Pine Mountain Lodge and what happened? Speaking of Sisquoc.
Well, I think the most qualified would be Ranger Boggs.
He was there.
Well, while everyone was talking about cabins, I was thinking about Pine Mountain Lodge. Pine Mountain Lodge, when I first saw it, it had only a few logs left of the cabin, and there was a chimney standing there. And we had a guy named Doc Jarman, and he was 6'6", and he worked for the Forest Service. He was an old timer to me, and he was taking care of the warehouse, and he told me that he was pretty pissed off because the ranger went up there to take care of a tree, a snag that was leaning over that structure. It wasn't really leaning much, but it was leaning some. And they had bought all the material to redo Pine Mountain Lodge, you know, to get it up to standard. Ranger went up there to follow this tree, and he fell it on the cabin. And it never was built, and Dr. Jarman never did forget it. You know, never did let him forget it. Yeah, but Pine Mountain Lodge, there's no remnants of it today there, but there's a flat section, and it's in a campground. There's good running water there. At times when you have some good heavy rain, you'll get native trout that can work their way up to Piedra Blanca. And the Pine Mountain Lodge is on a tributary of the Piedra Blanca Creek. And I've seen native trout in this cold water that have worked their way up. It's unbelievable they can do it, and then they can stay up there as long as there's water, and there usually is water there. And then the camp, you know, the people maybe in the last 20 years like to burn the firewood they can get hold of. So what logs were left were burned up, and what signs were left were burned up. And so I found a part of a sign I had put in the ground one time up there, and the post was gone, but the sign was still there. The bears had got to it, and there still was bear hair in the sign itself. So the old telegraph line went over the mountain as a single wire, and it went from Ojai to Nordhoff and down to Piedra Blanca, up the Piedra Blanca Trail, and up to Cuyama Peak, and Reyes Peak had one, and then Reyes Creek. And anyway, that was our communication system, and so I found some of that wire, and I climbed this tree, and I hung it from the wire, and years and years and years later, Rick was up there, and he was asking me about that sign. I think it was you asked me about the sign, and it's still hanging from the tree as far as I know today. But one other log cabin, or cabin that I always admired, and it was truly a log cabin, was McDonald Cabin. And it burned during one of our fires. But down below the log cabin, there's no roads into this area either. He was an old miner, and he did some exploratory mining. I heard there was 3 shafts up there. I found one of them, no, not 3. But down below the log cabin, there was a rock cabin with a wooden roof. And in McDonald Cabin today, that rock structure is still there, but the log cabin above it had been burned up.
There's a picture of it there. McDonald's.
That's in Alder Creek.
Well, if we can turn that light off, you might be able to see it.
Yeah, the trail going in there.
No.
John mentioned...
It's a dark photo too. Sorry.
What are those lines?
John mentioned finding bear fur in the sign. We got to talk bear stories, because that's part of the Los Padres. There was, back 150 years ago, the grizzlies were crawling all over the place up in Rose Valley. Well, Jeff Howard said that he could scare you up a bunch of grizzlies without too much effort. And I know Craig's got a great story near Topa Topa.
Way to build it up there.
Yeah, but Mike, have any bear stories?
Oh, not a lot of bear stories, but as you know, the grizzlies were here originally, and they have a tendency to like a large area to work in. So they kind of kept the black bears pushed up towards Morro Bay, a little bit down towards San Fernando and so forth. So then as the pioneers came, like in the book Lions, Murders, and Grizzlies by Charles Outland, he even tells you how much a pound of grizzly bear sold for in the supermarket, along with the bighorn sheep. But they were fairly easy to get, and unlike the black bear, who's kind of sneaky and really doesn't want you to see him, the grizzly would come out, and so the professional hunters would shoot them and then sell them. So eventually they thinned them out, and then they went extinct. And then so the black bear started migrating down from the Morro Bay area and kind of up from the San Fernando area. And then came agriculture. And then along with agriculture, we had an artificial food source. So especially in the early 60s, when they started, in the mid-60s, and started getting a little drip irrigation going and some hillside stuff, because the avocados don't like the wet feet and all that. And they started planting a lot of avocados in that urban interface area, between where the people live and the forest. So then the black bears started populating, and they tend to still like the urban interface area because the living's easy. It's kind of like living in a convalescent home. You don't have to walk too far for your grub. So they'll go break some limbs, eat some avocados, and walk up the hill maybe a mile or 2 miles, and find a nice cool place. And so you'll find them, from Fillmore, there's the old Rancho Sespe. There's some avocados up there in the hills, and the bears really like those. And then all the way up to Napomo, but mostly like Fillmore, Santa Paula, Ojai, Carpinteria, and Santa Barbara. You'll find the highest concentration of black bears. And like I say, you're going to find more of them in the urban interface area than you will in the wilderness, because it's kind of hard living up there. And of course with the drought and so forth, more and more will collect. And there's more black bears today than when the Indians were here. A number of years ago, I participated with Fish and Game in a bear distribution survey. We weren't counting the bears. They're very difficult to count because they're real sneaky and they hide and stuff. But what we did is, my little route, I had 2 routes. One was on Sierra Madre Ridge, which is Santa Barbara Canyon. And so every mile they would have me hanging mackerel can. I'd take a church key, put 2 holes in the top of the mackerel can, hang it with wire. And every 7 days I would check it. So I would go up Santa Barbara Canyon, up to the top. I don't know if you know where Sierra Madre is, but it's a road that goes from Highway 166 all the way down to Paradise down by Santa Barbara. It's a long road. And then I would go down the Jackson Trail to the Cisco. It was my little run. It was about a 12-mile run. And then my other run was from Doe Flat, which is in Fillmore. I'd get dropped off at Doe Flat, and I would come out Rose Valley. My wife would pick me up at Rose Valley. So every mile I'd hang a can. So they did this throughout California, so they could make a definitive map to overlay their old distribution map. And what had happened, like in parts of Bakersfield, the Hatchapees, the Greenhorn Mountains, where agriculture had creeped up near the forest, the bears were like, here there's primarily avocados they like. Over there it's onions, watermelon, cantaloupes. They'll come out of the hill. So anyway, the modern distribution map is, there's quite a few more black bears in California than previous to agriculture. So, but there's a lot of bears here, and I just came out of Sierra Madre a couple hours ago, and Santa Barbara Canyon, and there was a few bear tracks there. But again, the living's really, really difficult there, especially in a drought. So I imagine this map.
I don't understand what the cans do.
Well, the cans was simply to see if I didn't cover that. Thank you for asking. The can was simply to see if the can had been disturbed. So if the can had been disturbed, then I'd mark it got hit. We don't know how many bears hit it, but we know. So then if I figured out where all the cans got hit, then they could make a distribution map. So, yeah. And they're like condo dwellers. So black bear, you can crowd more of them in, per square mile than you could the grizzlies. The grizzlies, they were like a rancher. They needed a lot of property. And a black bear is more like a condo dweller. They'll fight among themselves and stuff, but they'll tolerate each other packed in a little closer area.
You folks that are interested too in the history of the backcountry, especially the Los Padres, will love the book that Mike mentioned, Lions, Murders, and Grizzlies by Charles Outland. Some great stories of not just bears, but lions and some others.
The book is a really good book, but just a reminder, a lot of the people had passed when he wrote the book. He did have some oral interviews, but a lot of it came out of the newspapers. So, as we know, the newspapers never let the facts get in the way of a good story. So don't believe everything you read in there.
Tell us your bear story.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Okay, so this, I'm not gonna, Perry's already prefaced this story as probably his favorite bear story. So, but it's not all that, so if you're disappointed, that's not on me, that's on Perry's epic dilemma. And actually, I happen to have a slide that shows the track I was hiking the day I ran into, and we've already ruined it for you, a bear. But basically, I had started on the eastern edge of Nordhoff, thank you, sir. Started on the eastern edge of Nordhoff Ridge. Let me find my pointer here. Right about here. And had hiked with my dog out to Hines Peak, which is the highest point in the Santa Paula, Ojai, Ventura Front Country. And on the way back, I decided, after I'd had a conversation with Ranger Boggs, and he had talked about the old site, not of Topa Topa Lodge campground, but of where the actual Topa Topa Lodge had been, and how the old batteries might still be in the ground and whatnot. I said, oh, let's, we'll go take a look. And I was looking for an old ice can stove, because that's what we nerds do on days off. So I came down the drop at the very headwaters of Last Chance Canyon, and if one were to follow this all the way out, that's what heads out to Thomas Aquinas on the 150. So I dropped in, I found what I was looking for, and I had lunch, and I beat through the brush all the way up through here. And I was moving really slow, because I'm not built for speed. And get out here onto the top of Topa Topa Bluff, which, the standing on the top that you see during the pink moment when, the cliffs are so well illuminated. And stood there way too long, watching the sunset, thinking, oh man, I bet right now, right below me, all the cliffs are pink. And this looks really cool. Totally losing track of the fact that I still had a ways to hike. So then, okay, I start moving along, and right about here, my dog runs ahead, like she sniffs something, like there's a rabbit or a deer, so being a total idiot, I'm like, oh, what do you smell, girl? Go get it, harass the wildlife like you're not supposed to, And then we get further on, and she just comes running back at me like on full Cujo mode. She's barking, she's freaking out. It's like she smells, like she's been hit by a skunk, but it didn't smell like a skunk. And she's just freaking out at me, and I thought she was like gonna attack me. And she runs behind me, and she starts leaning into the back of my legs, right?